Hey, this is Christian Roldan.
And Jordan Morris from the Seattle Sounders Football Club.
And you're listening to
This is Nos Audietis. This episode of Nos Audietis is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Audietis since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
Save by Fry! The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Rangers through the middle to crown it for Seattle! And now they truly can start the celebrations. It's the Sounders MLS Cup.
Nicola Dero leaves absolutely no doubt! The Sounders rule the region!
Seattle Sounders is going good!
They've scored! They've scored! Finally!
This feels fucking awesome.
This is a tiny dog.
Is that what you young people call twerking?
And Porter says cheated!
You wanna win? This is the Seattle Sounders, bro.
Welcome back to another episode of Nos Audietis. I am Jeremiah Shan. Joining me today is Susie Rantz and Aaron Campo, and this is our mailbag episode following. I don't know. Are we? I keep forgetting how we're setting this up. Are we calling this like ahead of week 5 or after week 4? What do you think we should? How should we be structuring this?
Well, this will come out closer to the weekend, so
Right. So ahead of week 5
next weekend. Yeah, I think that
which
works.
I guess is match day 6 technically.
Yeah. I don't like the match day stuff. It doesn't
sit right with you.
It just doesn't register as anything, you know.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have a bunch of mailbag questions, and just as a reminder to listeners, all of these questions come out of our Discord, and if you'd like to become a member of our Discord, you just got to become a supporter level member of Sounder Heart, and you'll get access to a pretty great community that we're constantly evolving. Just the other day, we had a big discussion about whether or not we should have a separate tactics section in Discord, and now we have one. So,
It's pretty good stuff in there too.
yeah, there is. It is. So anyway, Aaron, why don't you go ahead and start off asking these questions? And
I would love to, Jeremiah. The first one is from Lair. I don't know if I've ever felt less emotion after a second yellow/red was given to a Sounder, talking about Josh Tencio. Maybe it was that he didn't seem to be adjusting his play. I believe he had left his feet in another tackle shortly before the second yellow, and I thought he was fortunate it hadn't ended worse. But also just seems like I have come to expect disappointment with this team post-CCL versus never get up/last-minute goals or heroics I felt like were a solid possibility before. Is it just me, or does it seem more like the vibe of this current makeup of the team? How do we shake it off?
well, I don't know how many times I've mentioned it on the show, but I'll tell you, I love it when someone asks a question that starts with "Am I the only one?"
Yeah.
It's just like it's such an honest framing of a question.
I really wonder if you've ever noticed how often I do that to you on purpose. I really hope that you have.
I mean, yeah, the vibes suck.
Yeah.
I don't have. I will say Josh Atencio. I don't know. I didn't notice. I did not check. I did not like. I don't remember feeling like, oh, he was lucky to still be on the field between the 9 minutes that elapsed between his first yellow and his second yellow. But so I didn't necessarily share that particular emotion. But yeah, the vibes suck right now. Like there's not really but I also think, I don't know, like last season didn't end quite as badly as I feel like we sometimes make it out to be. They played pretty well down the stretch. They didn't score a lot, and maybe that's what it is. It's like this team just needs to start scoring some goals, right?
Yeah, I think so. It feels like I don't want to say a dam breaking situation, because I think that's probably doing this offense is currently constructed a little too much credit. But I feel like right now it's just a lot of pressing and a lot of frustration and a lot of maybe poor decisions in the final third that are born of that frustration. So I think things will improve if they can just get a goal from the run of play. But I think everybody kind of knew that this was not going to be a team that blew the doors off of the opposition. And I think losing their three arguably most important playmaking options for most of this first part of the season has certainly not helped things in that regard. But vibes are vibes, and it's pretty easy to change them. I don't think that this team is cursed or anything. So obviously the bad news is by the time everybody gets healthy and things are turned around, maybe they've dug themselves a hole. So certainly hope that's not the case. But I don't know. I thought I also was emotionless about the Atencio red. I was annoyed by it because I think it was a really unnecessary red to get.
Yes, it was.
And I thought both fouls were probably don't get called. You've convinced me of this, Jeremiah. Probably don't get called by a non-replacement ref, but we're both fairly called red or yellow card challenges. So I didn't have a ton of complaints about it. But I thought that the Sounders were going to be able to weather the storm, even with Atencio going off. I just thought they looked that comfortable defensively. So I was wrong about that, but that's how she goes.
You have anything to add there, Susie?
Oh, just that. Yeah, I agree. In real time at my seats, I actually, like, as Josh was making that slide, I was like, Josh, you're on his yellow card. And then I thought he got lucky, and then he didn't. So it was like in the moment, I was like, oh crap, this is going to be called. So no, I think it does feel like the vibes are fine, and then something snaps, or like they just like they can't like get the crowd into the game after they score, or even score to get the crowd in the game. So if they can score from the run of play and get the crowd into the match a little bit more, I feel like that will be good for their momentum. But right now, I'm not feeling it.
Yeah, it was I guess I'll just get into this a little bit on the yellow card. It was a dumb tackle. There was no reason he needed to go into that. I don't think it was a particularly bad tackle, but it was just so unnecessary. It's, he's 80 yards away from his own goal. There's just no reason to go into that tackle. And so it's dumb to put yourself in that position and allow the referee to make that call. But I think one of the things, we may as well talk about this a little bit. One of the things that the replacement refs, I feel like, are not doing is like giving a lot of warnings or talking to players a lot and doing things that you kind of expect refs to do. And maybe that's not by the book, but it's like sort of like the soft skills that experienced refs have, because they don't really want to be red carding everyone. They would rather keep their cards in their pocket if they could. And I don't know, maybe that's ultimately not a good thing, but it's definitely something that requires adjustment. I would be curious to see actually how the number of cards during the first, during this stretch compares to a comparable stretch in previous seasons. But
anyway. Yeah, I felt like too, the game actually seemed like fairly decently managed until after the red card. Like it, even like leading up to it, like, I don't know, you can get semantic-y, but then it seemed like the ref like let the emotion of the red card get to him or something.
Yeah.
And then the game just kind of like completely got lost, it felt like.
Yeah.
Yeah. My theory was that he didn't realize that Josh was on a red or was on a yellow, and that's why he didn't whistle it dead. Because he let the play go on for a minute. And by my understanding of the rules, if a player is getting ejected, you're supposed to stop play as soon as possible. And he let play go on for almost literally a minute. And I'm almost 100% convinced he also didn't realize that Raul didn't have a yellow, which is why he showed him a red card initially, and then realized he wasn't on a red card. But
that was so weird.
It was a weird game. Yeah. But all right. So next question. This one from our good friend Bill Jones Trumpet. He says, "It's great that MLS has jokes, but scab referees aren't funny. Will coaches and players on the bench getting cards encourage ownership to get a deal with pro? What will it take? I may be alone, but these refs are making the game a lot less fun to watch." Good transition.
Yeah.
Good way to stack these, Aaron.
Oh, thank you. It's very bad. I think that we talked about this in the season preview or first game preview, that MLS was probably hoping and Pro was probably hoping that the referees would be not disastrous enough to force the union's hand. And I don't know how any rational observer could possibly think that's been the case. It's been horrible. People that I know that only watch MLS casually have noticed it without even really like knowing, like, oh, I was wondering why the refereeing was so bad, and then I heard that these are replacement referees, and that sure does explain a lot, right? And yeah, it's truly awful. The referees don't look like they're having a good time, and I would feel sorry for them if it weren't for the fact that they have crossed the picket line to be there. So yeah, I don't know what it's going to take. It seems shocking to me that in a season that's so important commercially, so important for the future of the league, there's a lot of eyes on the league, that for such a relatively small sums of money, when you have all of this money flowing into the league from the Apple deal, from expansion fees, that they're willing to let this go on as long as they have, that seems completely irrational to me. And so it feels like it's about something else. It's about something else other than the bottom line. And who knows how long it's going to last in that case.
It is, and just as a reminder, it's something like $95,000 per team that it would cost them to essentially just give the referees everything they want. And I'm imagining that there's probably some compromise here that isn't quite that expensive, but it's, yeah, it does feel like the owners want to win this, and they are willing to, take some hits in order to feel like they won. And that just seems unnecessary, I guess. Like this, it's baffling. It's baffling, frankly.
Anything to add, Susie? Or
I don't have a lot more. It's hard to travel across the country, and refs have to do it as much as teams have to do it. And
yeah.
Like everything is more expensive. So just pay them.
Yeah. Expected to do that, by the way, and having this as a side gig as well, which I think people kind of, it's easy to forget because it seems crazy to me. Next one is from Spaceman Spliff. How is the Providence sponsorship money being spent? When we signed the Providence deal, $10 million per year, parenthetically, many expected it to unlock a new era of first-team investments. Outside of Pedro de la Vega, we haven't appreciably spent since then. Pedro de la Vega was signed, a month ago? When can we expect to see the Sounders start to improve the product on the field with this tainted money? Did we spend all available cash on Longacres and buying the rain?
I mean, I think in all fairness, I think a lot of it probably was spent on Longacres.
Yeah.
But I mean, I will not to right. And I don't think a lot of the money necessarily was spent on the rain. Based what I can tell, I don't know. We'll talk about this. We talked about this in an earlier show this week, but my reading on this is the Sounders aren't putting up a lot of money for the rain. They're more probably going to end up putting up resources. So I wouldn't blame the rain if that's sort of what's happening here. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's fair to expect maybe some more first team investments, but they still have a budget. They're still like I know there was a desire to buy everyone out and like spend and then go out and spend twice that much money on new designated players. And I guess if that's what you were expecting, I can see how this is frustrating, but I don't know. I think we might have to be a little bit more patient with the roster spending, unfortunately. But the Sounders have not given us a rundown on how they're spending all that money.
Yeah. This is not I think everybody knows how I feel about the Providence deal. We've litigated that quite a bit in the past, so no need to get into that. But taking Providence out of it, it's a good sponsorship deal for MLS. $10 million a year is not that much money. It's really not. And I mean, that's basically Pedro de la Vega's salary and transfer fee, right? For his salary for 1 year and his transfer fee, more or less. And I think too, if you just think through the what you're asking, did we spend it all on Longacres? I mean, that's a huge investment. That's an enormous investment that I think is going to pay dividends for years to come, right? If the choice is between buying out a DP and going and signing another one, or Longacres, and I don't think that's the choice. I think it's clearly a false choice, but just for the sake of argument, I think Longacres is clearly a better investment. And so if that doesn't give you as much, ability to spend freely, because you're making that choice and that investment in the future, I think that's a pretty easy decision to make.
I think I've said this before, and I will give this. I think it's fair, though. At the same time, I agree with you. I do think there's something to be said, though, that it's hard for a fan to sort of appreciate what Longacres is, in part because fans don't really get to interact with it yet. And so maybe that as fans get to interact with it more, the feelings around Longacres will start to change. But I don't really blame anyone for seeing, okay, great, that's great, you have a new training facility, but what does it, like, I don't get to watch the training facility play. I don't even get to watch people play at the training facility. Although I will say it is open if people want to go out there. Not a lot. I mean, you can go out and watch training. It does, like, the facility is not necessarily an attraction at this point, beside wanting to watch people train. But it's, so I can understand that frustration, and I can understand why people want to see more direct investment in the first team, because that's who they get to watch. That's who they are paying to watch, right? So I understand that, but again, I think we might have to be a little bit more patient with, how the payoff on this thing. All right. So this is from Dorcas, and he says, so for all those who don't know, FC Cincinnati suspended Laurel Faller's press credentials for 2 weeks. This is due to, quote, talking to sources outside the team facility or team sanctioned interviews. As media, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on this? Also, how do the Sounders handle independent media in situations like this and in general? I guess maybe should I just go ahead and answer this, even though that's not the format of this?
Yeah, I will definitely defer to the two of you who actually do interface with the team.
Well, Susie, why don't you? What's your impression? Like, what was your reaction to Laurel's?
My reaction, hearing her side of what FC Cincinnati was complaining about around her talking to sources outside of sanctioned interviews, is that's what a good reporter does.
Yeah.
You don't just take one source as your only source, especially when you're trying to understand, why did a player leave? What was behind this deal? Those sorts of things. You try to find additional sources. So, and my experience, and I'm not as much of a day-to-day, I don't have as much day-to-day experience with this, but my experience is that doesn't make teams particularly happy. I mean, we've gone and asked people outside of the reign, and I don't think they've been happy about it, but they also haven't told us they're going to do anything about it. And we've built a really good relationship. So it seems like a really bad excuse from FC Cincinnati, if that's what really happened.
Yeah. My only frustration has been, I wish, I don't know. I guess I'm not totally clear on why Laurel hasn't just sort of like let loose and just said, look, this is exactly what I'm being suspended for. Or maybe she doesn't. Maybe that's part of the problem. I kind of get the impression they haven't been really clear about the specific violations that they're accusing her of, but they did make some they made a public statement that made some really broad accusations about her professionalism, but then didn't actually give any details as to what they were alleging. And to me, it just makes the FC Cincinnati look awful. The to directly answer the part about the Sounders have never done anything remotely like they've never threatened to cut off our access. We have a pretty good relationship with the Sounders, and I'm sure some people would say like, oh, well, they've never threatened you because you've never done anything they don't want. And that's not true. We've definitely done things. We definitely have talked to sources outside of the official channels a lot. And sometimes they get annoyed about that, but they also generally understand that that's just part of the gig. Like they understand that independent media actually is a pretty important part of the ecosystem. And they've kind of gone out of their way to make sure that we have that they treat us just like any other media. Like they like, for them, the most important outlet covering them is probably the Seattle Times, and that's the outlet they have the least control over. And the same thing with the various TV stations. Like even the TV stations that they don't have direct relationships with, so I think the Sounders get it a lot more than FC Cincinnati does. And I'll also note that the Sounders are probably as good with access as any team in MLS. And I don't think it's a coincidence that they have more outlets covering them than almost any team in MLS. I just think that it breeds a lot of, it's sort of like an ecosystem that feeds itself. And so from the Sounders perspective, I think they get it. And from Laurel's perspective, I hope she does everything possible to make FC Cincinnati's life difficult on this situation, because what they're doing is total crap.
Agree. All right, this next one is low-hanging fruit. It's from Claxon5. What will happen first? Our ideal 11 takes the field, or rain sale is finalized and announced?
What do you think, Susie?
The $58 million question.
Yeah.
I thinking about injury timelines. I'm going to say I think the rain sale. I just will say I don't think it's going to happen like overnight.
Right. But I agree with you. I would be a little shocked if like João Paulo is probably the farthest one away at this point. And I suppose it's possible he could get on the field in the next couple of weeks. And I guess that would maybe throw this off. But I'm definitely, I think the Rain are going to get announced first. All right.
Seems like that.
Aaron, this one's for you for sure. Nick asks, I passed a car with Sounders license plates and noticed the old crest. I looked at the state Department of Licensing page and it still shows the old crest here too. Any idea if the club has awareness of this or if they'll be updating it to the new one?
We were actually talking about this before we started, and I didn't know this, but Susie pointed out that it's required to be passed as an act of the legislature for a new plate. Now, whether or not that applies to just a change in the design, I don't know, but I would assume so, right? Like, would seem to make sense to me, because they already have like that level of bureaucracy involved. Why not? Why not keep it in the system? But yeah, I don't know. I don't understand the team license plate thing. I really don't. Like, why you would want it, I guess. Like, there's way cheaper ways to get a sticker. It's like $1,
I'm curious what the money goes to too.
Yeah,
like
me
support
too.
some of the other ones, it's like environmental causes. I don't know what a team one does.
Yeah. I would love to get one of the the animal friendly ones, except it has that comic strip on it that I don't love. But like, that's a good cause. I get that, but just like, oh yeah, the Sounders, I'll give them more of my money. For some,
what if they just cut the Sounders like a percentage of the revenue they make off of it? That would feel really empty, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would.
So you mentioned that Susie, you mentioned that the Rain might have a license plate option too. And that's where this conversation went off air. Do you know if that moving along? Do you know?
I know that I can't remember if it was last year or the year before because years blend together, but Tawana Nobles, who is the CEO of the Black Future Co-op Fund, but is also a state senator, formerly state representative, was like rallying people on social media to like encourage people to vote for get this through committee to pass to have a rain license plate. It didn't pass, and I don't know if it's been brought up since then.
Didn't pass. So is that like a thing where they needed like a certain number of co-sponsors, or was it like an up-down vote and they actually said no?
Yeah, I don't know if what I don't know if it didn't even get to a committee vote or not. That's the one, like you have to get to a committee vote and then it can pass like through to another.
Although in that case, maybe it was just as well because they would have had to
update it. Yeah,
they had to update it.
They just knew. They all knew.
Right, exactly. Like, well, let's hold off. We're not so sure this is the name that's going to stick. All right. So, Aaron, this is a big one. No, I guess this is yours.
Yeah, it is. And for what it's worth, the Sounders license plates goes to the Washington State Mentors, a public-private partnership based in Issaquah that provides grants and assistance. So I take it back. I understand now why you would want that license plate.
So it does go to it goes to a charity. Even
it does. It looks. I think that they pretty much all have to.
That makes sense,
right? Yeah. So I'm sorry for being cynical. Last one is from Boomstick 315. Hypothetically, if the Sounders became the owners of Lumen Field tomorrow, and assume the Seahawks no longer play there, how would you expect them to overhaul it to best suit their needs? Would you expect capacity reduction, new accommodations, etc.? If you were in charge, what would you do?
So this was kind of an interesting conversation on the Discord, and there were some, one of the areas that was suggested that the Sounders really lack is, I think they called them like mid luxury. I don't know, that's not the right term, but it's like something that exists between full on like luxury suites and like the basic club suites. So it's like a premium, but not a uber premium that you would be paying. And it would be interesting to see how they might incorporate some of that into the upper deck. But I think the Sounders would probably be really focused on short-term deliverables if they were to be in charge. I would like to think they'd put in grass. Maybe they could turn the section, the Brom end into safe standing. Maybe they could have some permanent TIFO rigging. They'd probably build a permanent locker room for both, I would think, them and the Rain. So they would each have permanent locker spaces, which neither one of them have right now. Where do the Rain change anyway? Do they use the Sounders locker? Where do they?
I'm fairly certain. I don't know, but I'm fair because we don't get locker room access. But I'm fairly certain. I don't know actually about the difference, but I know like obviously with the doubleheader, they must have 4 locker rooms within Lumen Field because
because I know that the visitors use what is the cheerleaders locker room for the Seahawks. I don't know there, but I would imagine you must be right. There must be 4 locker rooms.
Yeah, because I don't know how they would have done the doubleheader without 4 distinct areas.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
They might have 5. Maybe they have 5 because I doubt anyone's using the Seahawks.
Also, those football teams are so dang big that they like 3 locker rooms would turn into 1 for a soccer team.
Right. Yeah, exactly. No, that's a good point. That's actually a good point. Yeah. So, they could probably fit the Rain and Sounders in the Seahawks locker room.
Yeah.
Probably. I mean, like all seriousness.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's realistically, I think that's probably those are like kind of the short-term deliverables that they could probably pull off. And there were some really wild ideas in the discussion about like totally blowing up the north end and reimagining the stadium in dramatic ways. But I'll be honest, I don't know that the Sounders would be doing like 9-figure capital projects.
Yeah. I mean, in a scenario where they're actually owning the stadium, maybe Adrian like won the Powerball or something. I don't know, but maybe then they would be. But I think in a realistic world, they're probably just going to do cosmetic changes and all that.
Yeah, it's not a very exciting answer, is it?
It's not. It's the spirit of the question was definitely, head in the clouds, dreamer type stuff.
Yeah, it was.
We just can't.
I don't think. I'll say I don't think Lumen Field is that far away from being a spectacular soccer stadium.
No, it's really not. I mean, honestly, I think that a lot of people would love that to be a little more intimate and a little closer. But I think if it had grass, I would be thrilled. If it had grass and the Sounders were in control of the way the presentation of the stadium was and their logo was all over the place, that'd be perfect for me.
Yeah, I think some logos, maybe the Sounders start their own like Ring of Honor kind of thing.
Yeah.
Megan Rapinoe's banner gets up there finally, those kind of things. I think, it would just make it feel a lot more like home.
Have you looked into, like, I asked the Sounders about Megan Rapinoe's jersey potentially, like if they, like, I know they're retiring her jersey. Are they going to have any sort of permanent installation in the stadium?
I don't know. I asked about, because they've won 3 shields and they're not up on the banners. And I asked about that last year and kind of got the like, oh, if we win the championship this year, maybe we'll do it, kind of thing. Because I think that, look, I have flagged in our Discord that it's quite expensive. I think a lot more expensive than people think to purchase those banners.
Yeah. And because they're not banners, they're like big metal signs.
Yeah. Like in the 50,000 or whatever range or more.
Right.
So I don't know. And I also like I still haven't seen rain stuff at Starfire. So I have to imagine like lots is on hold while they're waiting for the sale to go through.
Yeah. I would imagine that's probably true. It seems like the Rain managed the off season reasonably well from a practical perspective, like making sure they were able to make some signings and bringing in staff and doing all that kind of stuff. But some of these bigger projects that are maybe not quite as imperative to the operation of the day-to-day seem like they got put off a bit.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the Sounders don't even control the banners and all that kind of stuff. That's, first and goal is ultimately the organization that controls all that stuff. So I would imagine the Sounders, if they were running the facility, they could probably take care of that a lot faster. So that would be another thing. But that's all the questions we got. Thanks for doing this with us, Susie.
Yeah.
We'll be hearing more of you on the RSS feed, I guess. We teased this. We talked about this earlier this week, but you're going to be doing a mini Rain podcast, kind of like how we do sound bites.
I am. Yes. I'm calling it Rainbow Reflections, spelled like the rain, the team. But yeah, inspired by you, because I think sometimes it's hard to get all the people together to do a full podcast. You and Aaron are the examples there. But perhaps not something we're able to do regularly with the Rain, but we can spend, 10 minutes talking about matches and big events, and we're going to give it a shot.
Great. Well, thanks for that. And so look for that on the feed. I am Jeremiah Shan, signing off for Aaron Campo and Susie Rantz. This is Nos Arietes, and we'll catch you next time.
We love you. Let's win another one.